We've already looked how incredibly easy it is to use Qlik Sense from a user's perspective, whether that be an executive level who's just reading data on dashboards, or whether it's an analyst who's actually interacting and driving down, or even a business analyst who's adding and kind of doing a self-service. Now let's take a look at how really incredibly easy it is to actually just import data on the fly and get started from scratch. I'm going to create this little application. As I open this up, first thing it's going to tell me is, hey Dalton, you need to get some data in here. What do you want to do? I can go through a script editor if I'm going to manipulate things and do a lot of complicated ETL, if I'm going to connect to different types of data sources where maybe I need to drive something from a code standpoint, or if I'm going to edit things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to simply just take advantage of a wizard where I'm going to drag and drop in data. And you'll see that it's a workbook that has several different types of tables. I've got orders. I've got information about specialties, my dimensions, things like those. I've got provider groups and payers and patients and providers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, bring this data in and prepare this. And what it's going to do is go through a little wizard where it takes a look at these things. And one of the things we've talked about over and over and over is the associative model. Well, how does that work? There's got to be associations between these tables. It's not SQL types of joins. It's purely how are they associated or related. I can do things like connecting them individually. And what it's going to do is it's going to try to find the best relationship between these two. He says, oh, you've got an MRN information here and you've got an MRN there. I think that's probably how you want to associate that. And I can do those manually as I go through, but maybe I'm not a database wizard. I don't know what these relationships are or even which tables should join. I can use this little wizard button where it's going to go make the recommendations for me. And so if I were to look at, oh, well, how did he decide to join orders and provider group? Let me see. Oh, look, provider group ID, provider group ID. Let me see between provider group and specialty. Why did it want to join specialty here as opposed to orders? Well, if I look at that, I see specialty ID and specialty ID. And you may be thinking, oh, that's really cheating. There's no way that everything's going to be defined that way. Well, typically your database administrator would have defined fields that have those relationships so we could find those names. But the story doesn't end there. If I were to look at orders and providers, here's where you're going to see the power of what's really going on. What this is actually doing is it's not comparing field names. I'm actually comparing apples to oranges here. The rest of the world can't do this. There's no reason Qlik can't. What we do is we're actually scouring the data and we start finding data matches. It's not the field names that are so important. It's the fact that it found values and field names that match. So while the rest of the world struggles to compare apples to oranges, and your mom has told you you can't do that, Qlik can in fact compare apples to oranges and find the right relationship so that analysts who are just dropping in data from different sources, things that may not have been driven by your database administrator, will still work. I can't imagine a world that would be much easier to compare data than a system that will actually look at the data fields and figure out what those associations can be. All I have to do at this point is tell it to load data. It's going to bring that data in and I can begin working with it immediately. So I'm just going to create a bar chart here. It's going to ask me what I'd like to do. I'm going to say I want to bring in this city, and you'll notice that we recognize that this is a geographical type of a component. I'm going to bring this in and I'm going to say, well, what I'd like to do is count the number of patients within each city so that I can find out what those things are. So within 4.5 minutes, I've taken data, fields that don't line up, I've let Qlik automatically associate those things for me, and I can begin immediately visualizing that data. Can't get much easier than comparing apples and oranges.